Hi, I'm Rosh from Energy Matters. Welcome to our podcast, A Road to Zero, where we dive headfirst into all things renewable. Join us as we chat with industry experts, tech specialists, and some of your favorite TV and radio personalities, asking the renewable energy questions that you want answers to. Our goal, a zero carbon future. Today, I am absolutely privileged to be joined by Dan Caesar, the CEO for Fully Charged and Everything Electric, tech specialist, TV celebrity, as well as definitely on YouTube, and staging probably one of my favorite events of the year, Everything Electric. Dan, how are we?
Hi, I'm really good, thank you. It's quite early here in the UK, but it's great to see you.
Mate, thank you so much for getting up so early. I've got the easy task. I'm just, late in the afternoon. It's a good time for me. Super early for you. Dan, before we can start talking Turkey, I'm obviously British, left about 26 years ago in November. I made the choice 26 years ago to come to Australia. The weather was absolutely howling. It was gale force winds, sideways rain. I was at work. What's it like in the UK today? Not that you've seen outside.
We've just had the best summer I can remember, so that's good. But yeah, it's just dark here now. We're entering the winter months, and you forget. You get up in the morning, it's dark. You take the kids to school, it's dark. You pick them up, it's dark, and there's a bit of daylight in between. So we're just adjusting to that. So the thought of coming out to Australia is pretty exciting for the team at the moment.
Well, I'm not gonna sort of put a dampener on it, but literally Melbourne on this Saturday. So today and tomorrow is actually quite nice. I'm just going to read the Melburnian crew who watched my podcast to say it's the same temperature in Melbourne on Saturday as it is in the UK today, or in London today. So, but the good thing is when the event is on next week, which is on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, the skies open up. It's sunny. It's beautifully warm. It's going to be a perfect weather day or weather weekend for the event. So you've absolutely lucked in, and the weather gods are currently in your favour. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, it's amazing to run something so big. We've done 22 of these events around the world now, and we're pretty good at organising events and planning them. With the weather, you just cannot do anything about that, right? So you always a bit of fingers crossed. But yeah, the event is largely indoors. So and even the test drives, the cars are waterproof. I think electric cars, believe it or not. So we're looking forward to it, whatever the weather in Melbourne.
Exactly. Well, I missed the last one, which was in Sydney in March due to the cyclone in the Gold Coast. So my flight was cancelled, unfortunately. So I'm really, really excited to be at the one next week in Melbourne. Been planning, counting down the days, checking out who's exhibiting, checking out all the cars you're going to have there. My crew's going to be there too on the Friday. We're filming a little bit of our TV show, Global Energy Revolution, which I'll spruik some more later on. But for now, the stage is all about yourself, Dan, and Everything Electric. But before we get into that, you and I haven't probably chatted before, so I'm keen to find out a little bit more about yourself, your background, what led you to Fully Charged and Everything Electric.
Sure. I mean, the reality is that I was not sure what to do with my career, and I ended up working for. We have a gas safety business in the UK that looks after all the boiler installations in the UK and make sure they're safe. So from humble beginnings, and I was director of communications there, and I immediately was drawn towards solar panels and heat pumps, and then more batteries and things like that. And I thought this has got to be the future. And so I've been promoting renewable technology in some form or another since about 2005. I got my first EV in 2015. Wow. And over time, I guess probably I've become an EV expert over time. But yeah, I came from the kind of renewable energy background and have been working to communicate the benefits of those technologies, of which there are many, for many, many years. And we have made huge progress in uptake on all of those different technologies. But the reality is, I think that sometimes we can overcomplicate the messaging, and our kind of thing is for any of these technologies, they're cheaper and better, and that's the thing we think will win more hearts and minds than anything else, because EV drivers can be, and I am one, overly enthusiastic about how great they are, and sometimes we could talk about all the benefits, but actually the thing that will move the most people is the fact that the technology, actually the running costs are so cheap, and how good the technology is as well. So we're trying to employ some discipline and get people to realize, actually that's the messaging that will get more people to go, maybe I'll take a test drive, or maybe I'll talk to someone about having a battery. So yeah, hugely passionate advocate for those technologies. Frustrated it's taking so long to get uptake up to where it is now, but also you have to take the big view and go, actually progress has been pretty quick, to be honest.
Look, it definitely has. I mean, I think more so as well in the UK and Europe. I mean, Australia is traditionally, very slow to adopt to anything, any new tech. I mean, even with solar power and batteries. I mean, I've been in renewables since 2009, and we're still only at 30%. And I mean, if you look at like from VHS to discs, and then to Blu-ray, and now to streaming. I mean, that adoption rate was absolutely phenomenal. But then if you go from like, if you're looking at using traditional energy from the grid, which is getting more and more expensive, to having your own power station on your roof, and now adding battery storage, I mean, it has been so slow. So for us, it's like I kind of have that same frustration here in Australia. EVs, in fairness, I mean, all the early adopters jumped on straight away. And over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, there was some really, really good uptake. But that has slowed down this past year. And I think really now people are sort of saying, and look, the problem we have over here is our media, like the media in the UK, is as damaging as it can on a few occasions be positive. So hybrids seem to be the flavor of the month at the moment here in Australia. But we really want to see the uptake increase significantly. And I think what I love most about Everything Electric, other than the fact that it's probably one of the biggest and most fun consumer events to actually attend, is just the range of cars that are available that most people have absolutely no idea are actually available here in Australia. And as you said earlier, it's I've got a number of friends who have an EV. I haven't actually got one myself yet, so that's next on the list to tick off. But really, it's understanding how much cheaper they really are. What would be your, if you look at how the UK has adopted, and I know you do these events all over the world, but what are the early days like in terms of, launching Fully Charged? And you've got an incredible YouTube channel that really sort of outlines all the great technology, loads of test drives. It's absolutely insane. How was that journey? I mean, building Fully Charged up and really just cutting through.
Yeah, well, it's sort of broken down into 3 phases, really. Phase 1 was 2010, when our founder, Robert Llewellyn, founded Fully Charged. I heard someone talk about timing earlier, and often we've been too early, actually, which is almost as bad as being wrong. You're just way too early. So Robert had the idea. Robert came out of a background of being a comedy actor on something called Red Dwarf, which is fairly
I remember Crichton
and the cat. Red Dwarf, and he also hosted Scrap Heap Challenge, which Junkyard Wars in the US. And he spent a lot of time in California talking to people about battery management systems in California in those kind of early days. And he just felt strongly that the move to fossil fuels, away from fossil fuels towards electrification, was going to happen. And as you do, started a YouTube channel back in 2010 on that very topic. And yeah, he was very prescient, very, very early. I joined in 2016 at the point where Robert was trying to work out how to commercialize it. The YouTube bit, unless you're Mr. Beast and you've got millions and millions of subscribers, doesn't really make you any money. And as I said, I was a director of comms, very passionate about the technologies, but also had a lot of event experience. So we decided to use events as a way of sort of growing the business, and it's been a tremendous success. We did our first big show at Silverstone Formula One circuit. A slight juxtaposition there in 2018. The Melbourne show we're delivering next weekend is going to be the 22nd around the world. And now we're actually even approaching the point where we're going to license the show around the world as well, so we can scale it up and do more of it. And so we've learned an awful lot in that time frame. When we first started to do Fully Charged Live, as it was called then, now it's called Everything Electric. When we first started to do it, there were about 10 cars, 10 EVs total. Wow. And people
humble beginnings.
Yeah, exactly that. Long-term EV advocates could name them all. Things like the Tesla Model X and the Tesla Model S, the BMW i3, the Nissan Leaf, the Jaguar I-Pace. There weren't too many cars available at that point. And yet we received the most extraordinary welcome. We had 6,000 viewers of Fully Charged show turn up to that first show. It was absolutely packed. But at that point, EV uptake was pretty low. We're talking lower than where Australia is now. And now, as of the last month, the figures were announced yesterday, 26% of new car sales are pure electric battery EV. And the used EV market, battery EVs now are flying in that market as well, because obviously there's a time lag between the new EVs selling and then the ones coming onto the used market, where we've hit that point. So we're in a pretty good space. It's still sensitive to changes. There's some policy support, but not much. And unfortunately, these things do need to be subsidized in the long term. But oil and gas is subsidized in the long term. For anyone who thinks it isn't, it is. It has been, and also it's achieved scale. So we're in a pretty good place in the UK. But actually, we had a few grants and such like in 2022, and they were pulled, and that flattened our market out completely. Okay. And now it's just starting to grow again. In 2022, we were level with the Dutch market. The Dutch market has continued to subsidize, and that's at more like 40% of new car sales are now battery electric, where ours is at 26% in the last month. Typically 1 in 4, and the next big level of the ladder is 1 in 3 car sales, not 1 in 4. How do we get up to that? How do we get up to the next level? So we've learned a lot through that process. We love Australia. Obviously, there's so many commonalities between Australia and the UK, right-hand drive being one of them. And so we're really eager to, I think, help take our learnings from what we've seen go right and what we've seen go wrong, and help Australia's uptake avoid those pitfalls and perhaps go a little bit faster than the UK has been. But the key consideration is making it clear that actually the running costs of the EVs are cheaper. The technology is not compromised technology, it's better technology. Obviously, there are some people who do huge distances who might be a bit more wary. We understand that, but educating people, saying that everyone will be able to go electric in time. Not everyone has to go right now. Everyone will be able to go in time. For some people, it makes sense now. For some people, it makes sense later, maybe when their car is being traded in. So we're very, very optimistic and upbeat about the future. The new range of cars that's coming onto the market is extraordinary. There's well over 150 models now in the UK of battery EV. Plethora of choice across all different car vehicle types. The one thing in Australia needs more use, right? That's going to happen. It hasn't quite happened yet, but that's obviously going to be a big signal to the Australian market as well that we're good to go. So we really want to help Australia understand how you can increase uptake quickly. And honestly, the secret, as well as telling people it's cheaper and better, is test drives. And that's what we're going to bring to Melbourne next week, next Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and bring to Sydney in March as well. The more people we can get in test drives, quite quickly their fears melt away and they go, it's just another car. It works really well. I like it. It's smooth. It's quick. And then they are that one step closer to putting some money down and buying one.
It really is an incredible opportunity to test drive those cars. I mean, when you think about, just the process you have to go through when you're thinking about buying a new car, you have to drive to a dealership, you leave your car on the side of the road, you kind of try and get yourself organized. You can take out one car, maybe 2 if you're lucky. Then you have to jump in your car again, drive to another dealership. You can pretty much spend the entire day and maybe only test drive about 3 or 4 cars, and it's absolutely exhausting. I remember coming to Everything Electric last year in Sydney, and it was absolutely insane. I mean, not only were we filming the cars as well and just creating a few little video test drives and chatting to the test driver, the people alongside you who are racing car drivers, by the way, not letting you race the cars, of course, because you're in suburbia. But at the same token, you could get through so many cars, and you can just slot into your diary. If you're there for the whole weekend, Friday through to Sunday, then literally you could be test driving about 8 different cars every single day and still have time to play with the other toys that are also at the event. So I personally would urge anyone that's in Melbourne next week to attend the event. If you may have to have work on the Friday, so you can definitely go on the Saturday and Sunday. Then one thing I do love about these events, and I can't wait to see the Melbourne event. I know is it the first time that you've hosted an Everything Electric in Melbourne?
It is, yeah. It's a launch event. We don't get nervous anymore. We've done it so many times. You have to start from scratch. We've got good reputation in Sydney. The show we had in March was absolutely packed. That was a year 3 show. Our next Sydney show is a year 4 show. So that's got more maturity to it. That's just the way it works. But for a first time outing, this is going to be a big show. and bigger than our Sydney launch show. And also we're trying to create some rivalry between folks in New South Wales and the folks in Victoria as well, to say to Melburnians, come on, you've got to be Sydney, get down, bring your friends and family as well. I mean, I think from our point of view, we want to create something of fun and entertaining. You know, the test drives is a key part of that. That's the heart of the show, I would say. Particularly the multi-brand thing, whereas I say you can look at, maybe if you're interested in an SUV, you could look at 3 or 4 or drive 3 or 4 in quick succession. Also in a very low pressure environment, because if you go into a sales room, let's say in Alexandria and Sydney, I don't want to do the dealerships down, but you might get some pressure. Well, in this environment, you get a very, very laid back discussion. You get to test drive, you get to talk to experts there. They all send their EV gurus to the shows. So it's a really good educational piece. And then what we felt early on was this show's got to be about much more than cars. So hence it being called Everything Electric now. And it really is EVs of all shapes and sizes. So we've got micromobility on the smaller end, all the way up to, you know, utes. And we've got the Windrose big sort of pickup truck there. We've had the guys at Janus at our shows before with the swappable battery trucks as well. And then Everything Electric also encompasses all the home energy tech too, which is a really, that's where I sort of cut my teeth. And that's a really, really interesting area, because quite often we see people get solar panels, then they get a battery, then they get an EV, or the other way around, they get the battery EV and then they get maybe solar panels and that sort of thing. So that's been really, really powerful. So yeah, we summarize it really as test drives, tech and talks. There's loads of stages there with lots of different talks, expert areas as well. And we do try and make it fun, you know, a fun day for the family, because the reality is that I've worked with a lot of engineers. Don't tell anyone who's listening who's an engineer, but quite often they can go into the weeds on stuff. They can really, you know, talk about stuff. They are the experts at the end of the day. But sometimes with this sort of stuff, you've got to give it some wow factor, some presentation. So yeah, quite often we say, you know, if people have got, you know, people wondering how they can do it, you know, this show will take it from how to wow, because they get in the cars, they talk about the technologies, and then they're kind of in the market say, yeah, I quite like a battery, or I quite like solar panels, I quite like an EV, etc. So it's been a great format, and one we continue to tweak and improve all the time. But we've done it in Canada, in the US, in Europe, in UK, and this is our 4th show in Australia, but our 1st one in Melbourne. So yeah, please support us if you can.
Absolutely. And look, guys, for anyone listening or watching, you know, there is so much more going on than just EVs. And as Dan highlighted, yes, you know, there are, how many EVs are going to be there? It's well over 100, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually changing day by day, so it is a very significant number. There'll be a lot of test drives. It depends show to show. We run typically somewhere between 3,000 to 7,000 test drives per show.
Yeah,
depending on the amount of cars that we've got coming down. But we've got a lot of cars there, a lot of cars that you could drive, a lot of cars that are there static as well. So if we can't get a manufacturer to participate, we've normally got the cars there as statics too. So yeah, it's very, very significant. But one of the things that makes me smile is just the kids and youngsters going around the micromobility tracks. You know,
I was going to say on the on the scooters, bikes.
I'm not target market. I'm old. And I like to sit in a car with, you know, with all that comfort that includes. But there's some great, you know, e-bikes and boards and all that sort of stuff to check out as well.
Well, I think last year my TV crew was just basically on the scooters. I mean, you know, a couple of them wanted to take a mountain bike for a ride, and you know, there's a couple of brands like Savage that we absolutely love, and they were showcasing their electric bike last year in Sydney, and I think they did again this year in Sydney. I think they're there again in Melbourne.
Yeah, so Savage's going to be there. I think they're from Melbourne, right? So
they are. Yeah,
that's great. We're really looking forward to doing it. I think we're filming with them as well, which the team is excited about.
Absolutely fantastic. So look, it is a family event, and so if anyone thinking, you know, what do I do with the kids? Bring the kids along, because they can jump on scooters, on e-bikes. There's plenty to entertain them. There'll be so many awesome brands there, as well as a whole bunch of my favorites in the renewable energy space with panels, batteries, showcasing the latest technology. So it really is an amazing opportunity to really get educated. And as Dan mentioned as well, the speakers are phenomenal. I mean, it's not a boring, stuffy event by any means. It's entertaining. So even the guys on stage, I mean, you know, I was cursing the fact that I just can actually dedicate time to listening to the speakers, because as you're walking around, you know, to the next car to go and test drive, you can hear these guys just really getting stuck into some really cool conversation. And, you know, there's panels of people on the stage as well at times. So it's a great opportunity to get educated, have some fun, and most importantly, just cut your teeth and check out the latest and greatest vehicles. Dan, a couple of questions for you. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the event. Obviously, just before I do that, for anyone who's listening and watching, 14th to the 16th of November, you can buy tickets directly from Everything Electric's website. I'll put that into the commentary when we post this on social media. But also you can jump onto the NG Mats website, check out our events page, and there's a quick link from there to head to. Dan, with people in the UK, and obviously the emergence of electric vehicles has really kicked off strongly in the UK and Europe, the US, as we spoke about earlier. Do you see, but if you look beyond electric vehicles and more so at climate change and the transition to clean energy as the primary energy source across the world, but really UK and Europe, is there a lot of sentiment from the public to say, you know what, we need to do something about this because we want to help the environment? Or is it really still being driven by, the energy bills and how much they're spending on power?
Well, I mean, make no mistake, I got into the industry because of concerns around climate. That was what motivated me at the beginning. It still motivates me today. We have a very successful couple of YouTube channels. One's called Everything Electric Cars. It's pretty obvious what that does. One's called Everything Electric Tech. And behind YouTube sits a YouTube studio, and you can see all the data and the analytics for the episodes you're filming. So you can see, when people are kind of leaving the episode, what things are making them watch more. And from our perspective, having done, I think, like 1,500 videos over 15 years, we know if we even mention climate change, quite a lot of people tune out. Now that is a sad reality, but we have found actually that is not the main motivator for people. So we are firmly of the belief that actually having technologies that don't push out toxic fumes is a good idea. Like, I don't want to be negative about Sydney, but London's been through a massive zero emission vehicle journey, and you can walk around London now and the air is pretty clean. Yeah. When I first started coming to Sydney for Everything Electric business, I couldn't believe the difference in Sydney. This is obviously before new emission vehicle standards, and obviously that's a process that Australia is going through. But I would, if you have the luxury of going to London, walk around the city, and then do the same in Sydney, you will notice the difference. You really sort of choke on the fumes in Sydney by comparison. And so this stuff is really, really important, but I don't think we need to ram it down people's throats. I don't think we need to necessarily talk about that. Equally, everything that we work on, whether it's, wind turbines or solar, batteries, cars, etc., has become politicized to a level now where it's actually hard to bring it up. So if you really wanted to have a conversation with someone that's going to land with pretty much everyone you speak with, I typically would say, actually, well, I've had an EV for 10 years. I've done X amount of miles, and I have saved, and this is a true fact, I did the work for an event the other day, I've saved 40,000 British pounds during that process, which is
about $80,000. About
$80,000, right? It's a very, very big amount of money. Just by having an EV. That is the sort of thing that gets people going, what, really? I actually had this discussion with a petrol pump attendant in the UK very, very recently. I think I drove my EV to the pump. The pumps weren't busy, so I parked by the pump. I normally, if it's busy, I park, in the car parking space. And the guy said, "Oh, you've got an electric car." And I think I was wearing something like this going into a petrol station. And he sort of started saying, "I'll never get one, I'll never get one." And I just said, "Well, just to let you know, this is how much I've saved." He went, and as I walked out the door, he went, "Really?" And I went, "Yeah, really." I walked back in, talked to him, and it is the sort of thing that gets people kind of aware of it. I think what you said earlier, Rosh, is really interesting about the change from some technologies, like VHS and Betamax is one thing that we talk about a lot. To smartphones is another thing we talk about a lot. The stuff we talk about is much bigger. It's infrastructure. It's much more expensive. The changeover period for a car could be many years, whereas a phone is much more kind of, you change it on a more regular basis. So it was always going to be slower. But the problem with slow change is doubt creeps in. Yeah. Whereas with quick change, no one had the chance to say, "Oh, smartphones are rubbish, because it happened within the space of 2, 3, 4 years. Everyone happened, right? So what's happened with this is doubt has crept in. We do need to be much more savvy about the comms, and the cheaper message is really, really important. But if you sat in a Zeekr or a Tesla or a Polestar, or I've got to upset all the manufacturers that I'm not going to
mentioning all the names.
That in a modern EV now, which comfortably does 300 miles range in all weathers, they are brilliant. There is no compromise. As I say, there are a few people going, well, I do huge mileage. I do 30,000, 40,000 miles a year. So I'm a high mileage driver. And of course, you've got some big country out there. So I get that as well. There's some interesting technology coming with what the industry is calling EREVs or REEVs, extended range electric vehicles, which actually are, we would classify them as electric vehicles because actually it's the battery that runs the car. But maybe they do 100 miles and then you've got a range extender that can get you going further. So that's an interesting technology, which we think will be quite popular in big country like Canada, like the US, like Australia, because that solves that issue. But the reality is that taking people on this journey, I don't think we should be talking about climate. If you believe in it, that's great. I think air pollution is even more powerful. But again, we don't ram it down people's throats. What we're trying to say to people is, look, this is great technology. And also, quite often, if I'm on a radio station, people say, why are you making me do this? We heard this sometimes in the UK. You may hear the same thing. Why are you making us go down this route? I would say, we're not. You don't have to. I believe you will go electric in time, but we take all the sting out of it. But for other people listening, you could go electric right now and you could save a packet. And that messaging is the one that really cuts through, we found.
I think what we've also realized as well, especially over the last 12 months, is the cost of electric vehicles has absolutely plummeted. Whereas it wasn't crazy expensive comparatively to a decent car like an Audi or something like that in Australia. But the cars period are expensive in Australia. But the cost of cars now are so low. And even when you're looking at amazing brands like the Zeekas, like the Xpengs, like the Geelys, who I actually had the pleasure of filming, thanks to you guys referring me to them in China, and just to look at how cheap and how affordable those cars are now comparatively to something that's petrol is absolutely amazing. So really, you can tick the affordability box as well because the costing has come down. And as you said, early in terms of the experience of driving one, I mean, there is just absolutely no comparison between driving an electric vehicle and just feeling that acceleration. I mean, you'd have to spend some significant dollars on a really, really good car, like petrol-driven car, to get that kind of acceleration and pull. But, with these EVs, I mean, no matter what the model, I mean, that pulling power and that sheer pleasure of acceleration to 40 k's an hour, to 50 k's an hour, to 60 k's an hour, depending on what the speed limits are based on where you live, but really is absolutely incredible. But then the lack of noise. And, I know, I do cars, and I used to work for BMW and racetracks in the UK as one of my jobs. So having the roar of an engine is amazing. But you can even get EVs with noise and, and adjust that noise as well, just to kind of give you that whole experience. But just having a quieter road without any pollution and, is an absolute dream, for anyone. And especially if you live on a busy road, you can't even hear your television, without sort of having to crank up the volume because of the amount of noise outside your home. So just ticking those couple of boxes in terms of saving an absolute fortune over a period of time, eliminating noise, eliminating air pollution is absolutely fantastic within itself. And,
people don't realize that, if you're sat in a queue of cars and there's air pollution, you're contributing to that, but then you're breathing that in your car. Your kids are breathing in your car. People don't even give that a second thought. But yeah, I have to say I had a wry smile on my face. I had the Hyundai Ioniq 5N recently on my driveway for a short period of time. That's one of the cars that makes the kind of vroom vroom noises. And it's all the vrooms, Rosh, none of the fumes, right? Because it's unbelievably fun. And I found myself sort of smiling like a grinning idiot, when I was driving that because of the noises it makes. But, for me, it is all upside. I mean, I would go so far as to say, because I think I'm probably talking largely to an audience of people who are kind of interested in this topic. I'd go so far as to say, if you've got a driveway and therefore you can have home charging, and, probably you could have solar and battery as well. But if you have that ability and you probably are doing less than sort of 35,000 miles a year as I am, or as much as that, if you're not getting an EV now, what are you doing? they are so much better, so much cheaper to run. As you say, the entry point is amazing. Actually, a little interesting fact for us, and we became quite depressed on a plane back from Sydney a few years ago. We worked out that the average car price in Australia is about 30 to 40% less in Australia than the UK. You know,
Wow. Okay.
If you feel about cost of living, I know there are some tensions in Australia. Come and live in the UK for a while, and you know, you will cry. It is so bad. So yeah, I mean, you left the UK. A few of us we haven't determined to do that yet, but Australia is such a tempting place. So, you know, for me, if you can add to that ecosystem, and if you can you get your own solar, you can power your own car. Maybe you can have a home battery. There's a battery rebate scheme in Australia, which is going great down. That's fantastic, because I think, you know, again, if you're going to look at messaging, again, that money you could save you on that I know it's an investment, it's an upfront investment, but the money it can save you is huge. Personally, for me, though, it's the resilience piece and the energy security piece that's really appealing to me, right? If there was a blackout, a brownout, or something like that, you know, and you can still be running your house, let's say, off the vehicle to the vehicle, you know, that's a hugely compelling proposition that I think speaks to everyone, not just sort of us, you know, tree hugging green people. It speaks to everyone across the piece, and money also should speak to everyone, unless you absolutely loaded and you love just sort of burning money to the air, which some people do. It really is a question of, you know, if you have got a driveway in particular, what are you doing? Get in an EV as soon as you can, start saving money, and start smiling more.
Absolutely, and I think everyone's kind of patiently waiting here, you know, for fast charging infrastructure to be set up. I mean, the one thing I did notice being back in the UK, I think it was about 2.5, 3 years ago, then also in Spain, there were so many EV chargers, and even driving around Spain, we drove from Seville all the way around the coastline to Barcelona, and no matter where we went, there was empty EV chargers. And then I had the same experience as that when I went to China about 3 weeks ago. There was just EV chargers and EVs absolutely everywhere. The levels of smog in China, you know, for me was just so noticeably lower compared to what they were when I was there, you know, even 2 years ago. You know, so everything is kind of like starting to get to where it needs to get to in China, and they're making fantastic progress in terms of adopting renewable energy technology. I think 6 out of every 10 EVs made in China actually sold into China. So everyone's jumping onto those as well, which is absolutely brilliant. But I think in Australia, everyone's got this concern, and it is one of the, you know, I think one of the core objections in Australia, which is around range anxiety. The one thing I struggle with, and I'm not dismissing anyone with range anxiety, so I have a few mates that are tradies that cross the border from the Gold Coast, driving to New South Wales. But really, the cars can now do what, up to like, you know, maybe between, let's say, from 300 kilometers all the way up to about 800, maybe even 1,000 kilometers. So really, you don't need to actually worry about range anxiety if you have the ability to charge your vehicle at home or charge it at work. That's kind of dismissive. So how often are you going to actually drive further than that and have that actually hit you as a core concern? Not often.
No, range anxiety is a myth, broadly speaking. You know, it's a concept that has been built by those who want to, you know, slow EV adoption down. The problem with the argument, Rosh, is that when I first got an EV back in 2015, it had an 80-mile range. And I was driving, I live outside London, I was driving in and out of London, and I was getting home on fumes, well, on electrons, let's say. I was getting home, I had hardly anything left. And that was all very well, because I was an early adopter and I was prepared to go through that pain. But that's not where the cars are now. The range on them is absolutely extraordinary. So, of course, there'll be people listening to this going, well, actually, I do even more mileage than that. I go on some really long journeys, and obviously you need to know the infrastructure's there. In the UK, I think we're going to have more charging than we need, actually, ironically, in the rush to put it in. I'm sure in Australia that is accelerating, and will get better and better. But the reality is that there is no range anxiety. I was out last weekend and actually got my battery on my car down to 1% for the first time ever. And I knew where there was a charger nearby, and I wasn't stressed. I actually sort of did it deliberately. Me and my son were in the car going, I wonder what happens when it gets down to zero, because we know there's a bit of buffer built into the lower end of the batteries as well. Anyway, we got there and charged up, but that I have sort of had to deliberately do that, because you it basically beeps at you. You can see it on the screen all the time. It really isn't something that happens. And here in the UK, we have things equivalent to the NRMA, which are RAC and the AA, for example, and they report that they're not picking up people stranded in EVs. They are still picking up far more people stranded in ICE cars and petrol and diesel cars. It just doesn't happen. So yeah, the range anxiety piece, maybe that was an issue when the car's at 80-mile, 100-mile range, but now they've got a huge range. And I do think these kind of extended range electric vehicles are something that could do quite well in Australia. I know the BYD Shark Ute, for example, which is a plug-in hybrid EV, is selling pretty well. And hopefully that's what people would go, get used to plugging something in, right?
Exactly. I mean,
that's a big difference.
And you mentioned earlier, and it's a topic that I'm very fond of, which is like, vehicle to home or vehicle to grid, vertical line, whatever you want to call it. But fundamentally, EVs have a massive battery. So they're all like around 80 plus kilowatt hours. And the opportunity of being able to then plug that into your home and use that as a power supply for your home in case of a blackout is absolutely incredible. So that technology isn't 100% across Australia just yet. So people are still a little bit green on the topic and looking to understand it more. But right now, obviously, from an Energy Matters perspective, we always, tell everyone to saturate their home with panels, as many solar panels as they can fit, get battery technology installed because it is heavily subsidized right now by the federal government. But then, for anyone who's not in that, doesn't have that opportunity, the thing to consider with that's happening and being able to be used in Australia very soon is the ability to actually use your electric vehicle as a power supply to your actual home, which is absolutely incredible. So really, if you look at the cost of investment, of electric vehicle, not only has the price come down considerably, so it's comparable, if not cheaper at times, than an actual, an internal combustion engine, which I know you just referred to as an ICE car. But at the same token, you've also then got the, a battery, a very large battery that's probably cheaper than buying batteries for your home. Sorry to all my manufacturing partners and suppliers. I'm not trying to put people off buying a battery for solar systems, but it is just another opportunity to add something else to your home that can actually help you in terms of lifestyle, which is absolutely incredible. And once again, saving you money on your power bills along the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's a huge opportunity. We've always said that there'll be a mix of batteries on your driveway and batteries in home. I think if you've got the ability to have both, then you will do that. But a lot of people will be able to access that battery on their driveway. Vehicle to grid, vehicle to home, bidirectional, whatever we end up terming it, is going to be huge. Australia's being pretty ambitious in that respect, and we would expect that to have a big impact. I mean, fundamentally, having a wasted asset sat on your driveway, which you don't use 95% of the time, which is the reality, you're paying for a car and you're having that asset and using it for something else is a hugely compelling thing. And so we actually think that as an unlocking mechanism, vehicle to grid, vehicle to home is going to be hugely powerful. When you think, actually, I can arbitrage energy. I can fill up the battery in the car overnight, or I can fill it when solar is plentiful, and then I can use it when the energy is expensive. I'm actually making money through that process. So we think that is where it gets really exciting, and where we approach the network effect later in this decade, where more people have got EVs, more of your neighbors have got EVs, vehicle to grid is kicking in, the technology, the range is getting even longer, technology is getting better, getting cheaper. We haven't really seen anything yet. One of the things that I think has been interesting in the UK, and we are talking, we also run something here in England called Electric Vehicles UK. We're talking to the Electric Vehicle Council in Australia about how we can work with them as well. We've seen some interesting stuff. The one thing that our industry was very skeptical about in the UK was green number plates. So in the UK, actually, if you've got a battery EV, there's a little green strip down the side of the number plate. The industry was super skeptical about that. Do we really need to do that? There's actually just something really quite reassuring, a sort of what I would call nudge policy of nudging people in that direction. Because whenever I drive around here, and I live in the southeast of England, which is the wealthiest part of England, there are a lot of EVs, and you see green number plate after green number plate after green, and subconsciously, psychologically, that is sending out a message that actually a lot of people buying these cars, living with them, they're not stranded by the side of the road, they're not running out of battery, they're not bursting into flames. This stuff that inspired by the Murdoch press that we share as Australians. A lot of this stuff is absolute rubbish, and these myths were they ever relevant? Were they ever real? No, I don't think so, but they're less and less and less relevant. So as I say, if you're looking to try an EV or talk about vehicle to grid, batteries, solar, all these things, maybe jump on an e-bike, maybe come and see a big rig, maybe come and see a U. We'll be in Melbourne next Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and that's the best place to do it. And then we'll be in Sydney in March as well.
No, absolutely. And I just want to touch on that as well. So with Sydney, I mean, the Sydney event's coming up in March. It's easy one to remember, same weekend as the Formula One. So whilst the Formula One's happening in Melbourne, don't worry about, you don't have to be upset that you're missing out. You can actually just attend Everything Electric instead in Sydney. With Sydney's event, I mean, we know a number of different people that are exhibiting at the event in Melbourne. And a lot of my partners, a lot of people that I work with in, renewable energy bits, solar power, battery storage, EV chargers, may not completely be aware of the event in Sydney. So how can they get involved? I mean, what are the opportunities for someone wanting to exhibit actually at the event?
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of different ways to do that. Typically people would take a stand. If they're a car company, get involved with the test drives. If they're micromobility, they can get part of the test track there, but get on the stages. It's good to tie down those details early doors. The show was pretty much sold out last time round, so we would expect it would be so again. But yeah, our team will kind of talk you through the best ways of doing that. It's not particularly expensive to participate. We're all about getting people in these cars, getting people onto these technologies. So the best way to do it is sort of email exhibit@everythingelectric.show, and then they can talk to our team about how to do that. But it was amazing. Sydney this year, I should say, was definitely in my top 5 of our shows we've ever done. The Sunday was just so extraordinarily busy, so vibrant. It was incredible. So yeah, we're looking forward to come back to Sydney. And then, yeah, hopefully the plan is that we will be able to do Sydney and Melbourne. And we do have ambitions to do more in Australia, but let's see. Get this one out of the way first.
Well, I'd like to see you do the Gold Coast. If I'm speaking frankly, Dan. I mean, the Gold Coast gets forgotten, right? We've got the best beaches in Australia. Yeah, there's no events here whatsoever. So I'd love to see.
Brisbane was on the list as well last time out, because Robert, his wife is from Queensland.
No way.
So we definitely like to. It's quite hard as a bunch of Brits on a different timeline to do it arm's length. So we're working on solutions to how we can do more in Australia. But yeah, we're really excited, and I think, yeah, as I said, we've experienced so many of the ups and downs, the pitfalls. I think we can play a part in helping Australia kind of get into these technologies even more quickly, because fundamentally you have so much more solar potential in Australia. Yeah. And actually, you have a lot of the materials, so you have proximity to China, which is the major player. So we think Australia could be a net beneficiary of this move to these new technologies, whereas sad old England is sort of getting a bit left behind, and the US is trying to deliberately leave itself behind. We think Australia can actually be a huge beneficiary of this move to cleaner, greener tech.
Well, look, as I mentioned earlier on in the podcast, I was lucky enough to visit China about 3 weeks ago. Went to visit Geely at the referred by Everything Electric, which was incredible. And just to watch, electric vehicles being manufactured from start to finish, like from stamping out the actual panels of the cars to start making them, to the very end and rolling them through a very vigorous testing process to make sure the cars were perfect, was 4 hours. Start to finish, 4 hours, then another one every single minute thereafter. So in the time I was actually at the factory, I think we saw 120 cars being actually manufactured and more coming off the production line. And the quality of the manufacturing process, the research and the development to get to that point, but just the quality testing all the way through the process was absolutely incredible to see. Because I know Australians can be a little bit, and as anyone can be a bit skeptical about, well, look, all these cars are coming from China, but are they a load of crap? It is the complete opposite. So really, I kind of welcome people to watch the TV show when it comes out in February, so you can actually see how these things are put together, and the precision that goes into the manufacturing process. But also when you attend Everything Electric next week on Friday, Saturday, or Sunday in Melbourne, or next year in Sydney, you really want to sort of go into those cars and do the test drives, because I think one of the first things you're going to be so impressed by is the build quality, is how simplified the interiors are, but it's to such a high standard. And then once again, for anyone who loves their smartphones, the level of technology in these cars is absolutely mind-blowing.
Yeah, well, they're termed new energy vehicles, obviously in China, software-defined vehicles often as well. We were in the Shanghai Motor Show earlier this year. Totally blew my mind. We on the Everything Electric cars, we cover Chinese cars on a regular basis. We have a correspondent in Shanghai. We knew it was impressive. Even so, we went and our eyes were kind of wide with excitement. The technology there is fantastic. But what's interesting to us is that's only my second favorite show of the year. I'm going to excluding my shows.
I want to know what your favorite one is.
but what was interesting, we fully expected to go to China and everything to be all electric. The Sydney show was probably our best Everything Electric show we've done this year. I think we've just done one in the UK, which was a big success as well. We rebooted Scrap Heap Challenge and Zap Heap. We're doing that next week at Melbourne. We're showing those videos as well, but that's by the by. But the best show I went to this year was Munich.
Oh,
because
wow.
of course you would go to Shanghai and you would expect the cars to be amazing. You'd expect them to be the very latest and greatest. The tech's fantastic. The quality of them, like I say, come and check out the Zeekas, for example, on stand at Melbourne. You'll see the quality of them. But I went to Munich thinking, well, this is the home of the combustion engine. This is going to be loads of tailpipes, loads of plug-in hybrids. It's going to be a real mixed bag. I could not believe the amount. It was almost all battery EV. From the Chinese manufacturers there, from the Koreans are making great cars these days, and also from the Germans. And what I have to say is that the race is on. Europe is trying sometimes to lobby against battery EVs, but they're not saying we don't want them. They're just trying to get it to slow down a little bit, this change, so they don't lose out to Asian competitors. But honestly, the Germans have upped their game so significantly with BMW's Neue Klasse vehicles. VW's ID2 is now going to be called the ID Polo, which is an admission that this is going mainstream, right? They're seeing the EV as the mainstream part of the business. So I came away from the German show thinking this now is really, really exciting. And it just wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't have happened without the initial spark from, I would say, Nissan, clearly Tesla, and then now taking over the baton, the Chinese and the Koreans. It just wouldn't have happened. But now you're at a point where the Germans are going, no, we need to up our game. That will, over time, make the Americans say we need to do the same. And eventually, some of the slower Japanese brands will realize they do have to participate in this. And I saw news of a Toyota Ute, Hilux Ute, coming out next year as well. So Toyota will get there too. But it's an exciting time, and the direction is very, very clear. But to accelerate it, we just need to, talk about the cost benefits really, and get people bums in seats, get people into these cars, and that's what our shows are all about.
Absolutely fantastic, Dan. Well, look, thank you so much for joining me today. I know it's early morning for you, and you've got a busy day ahead, so I do appreciate your time. And I can't wait. Will you be there next week?
I won't be there personally. My wife and I work together, and so we alternate the Australia shows because we do have a couple of children that we can't leave in the house on their own for 10 days. So I'm not coming to this one. I am incredibly jealous. I will be in Sydney personally, but my wife is running the show. We've got Robert Llewellyn there on stage. We've got Jack Scarlett. They're funny guys. We've also got great local presenters like Tom Gann from Ludicrous Feed, like Gavin Shoebridge from Kiwi EV, a whole bunch of kind of Antipodean presenters as well. It'd be great to see you guys there. So I personally am feeling very, very jealous that I won't be there in person. But you're making it sound like the weather's going to be similar to Britain anyway.
Well, it definitely will be the day before. It does look like the weather's going to improve for the event. So I don't know how you've managed to convince the weather gods to shine in your favor. But I checked the forecast earlier. Melbourne is 4 seasons in one day, but it does look like a beautiful, glorious weekend as well. So, I think it's going to be the perfect day out.
Well, I will be following it online, and I will see you in Sydney, I hope. But no, it's a great show. I think of the 22, I've maybe missed a couple over that time frame, and I hate it because I'm constantly just trying to watch videos, look at social media. I like to see the new cars as much as anyone. I like to meet people and talk to people. So, but yeah, when you're this far away, you have to make some compromises sometimes. But no, we love Australia, and we love being part of this sort of growing community.
Well, look, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you. I'm sure my audience is now full of more knowledge as well, and appreciate your time today. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, take care. Thanks, Roshan.
You too, mate. So, guys, for anyone watching or listening, you have to turn up to Melbourne next week on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It is a 3-day event. You don't have to get every single day. I mean, I'll be there on a Friday with the TV crew. we are filming the introduction to our new television show, which will be on air next February. So you don't want to miss that, Global Energy Revolution. So if you are there on Friday, come and say hello. You may actually be, one of our someone in the background as we're doing some presenting, so you can get yourself on television. But more importantly, as Dad mentioned earlier on in several parts of the conversation, this is an opportunity to discover EVs. If you are one of the naysayers, if you are someone that's been umming and ahhing, really concerned about, range anxiety, my car catching fire and burning down my entire house, this is a really good opportunity just to speak to experts. It's not salespeople, as Dad mentioned. You're speaking to the brands, directly to their product experts, the people who have built these actual cars and know everything about them. So hit them with your questions. And most importantly, jump behind the wheel and take a few for a spin, because you don't really know what you're missing until you've actually tried it. And then once you're actually familiar with the cars and understand what you like, you can then help your local dealer and then go there actually empowered, full of knowledge, understanding, what it is you're actually looking for. So I'll be there for next Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Check out the notes below and you'll be able to find a quick link to actually register for tickets and also to get all the details of the event itself. Other than that, thank you so much for your time today. I do appreciate it. I can't wait to see you on the next one. All the best. Take care.